I got to throw out the first trade proposal here. Tell our boy Nicholas Schuster if this is batshit crazy or brilliant. Minnesota's 20-something pick and Addison for Arizona's 12th pick.
No, I think they're happy taking the 12th pick. They're not in a rush. They're happy to fucking take whoever this is. This is where I look at.
Well, so appease Nick quick.
It's not crazy.
No, not that. I'm just saying if you couple Addison with Minnesota's pick, going to be 21 or 22, what do you see being the highest they could trade up if that was it? If you're just trading Addison in the first, how far can you move up the draft?
I don't think there's a world where you get higher than this. Off the top of my head.
So the Wild are stuck where they're at.
I'm trying to think, like, unless you're St. Louis and you want, and like Addison's that appeasing.
Oh, sorry, I'm not comparing it to Arizona. I'm saying, like, is it short of Arizona? Like, can they move up to 18? Can they move up to 13? Like, what's realistic in your mind?
I mean, I think Buffalo would be interested, but they don't really. I don't know if they necessarily need any defensemen. I mean, like, at that point, I think there are plenty of teams who'd be like, okay, if you want to like give up this prospect and we still get to pick 20. I mean, Detroit has how many first round picks? Any team that has multiple first round picks already probably would be like, yeah, we'll move back a couple slots, I guess. And this is just me thinking off the top of my head right now, but
sure. I had to throw it out there because everyone's under the assumption that
Montreal was a 17. They get Florida's pick.
Yep, Florida's pick at 17. Like, is it worth it to you to move up 5 picks for coupling Addison in a deal?
I don't know. I think you're not getting a guy that's really gonna bolster that pool for several years. And I think you can get someone at 22 that'll probably have at least a similar, slightly lesser like effect on you. So,
yeah. Well, let's go batshit crazy then.
I think Addison like that thing would probably be more realistic and like potentially even like advantageous to group a few picks.
Does Rossi, Addison, and that draft pick get you top 6 or 7 in the draft in your mind?
It's weird. I think both teams are like, fuck.
I don't know what to do.
They're like, why do they want to do this? And then you're all sitting there like, why do I want to do this? Hey man, we don't want to do this, do we?
Both teams both teams are probably like, and then both teams like, wait, hang on, you want to back out? No, I still want to do this.
I think you're nuts if you do that if you're Minnesota.
I'm totally with you, but I love both those players to death. So I'm biased and I can't weigh in. Before we get to the Wild, because I know it's a few picks away, Z, but have to throw this in from the Juice. He asked before, could the Wild afford to draft another Russian? He mentioned Simashev, who you think is going to go way sooner.
He'll go way before.
Do the Wild have a shot to get Callum Richie?
Yeah, no, for sure. And like, he's one guy that like we've talked about other guys in that range too, but Callum Richie at this point for sure potential to end up in Minnesota. And I could see JUDD Brackett loving Callum Richie because another guy that's for sure a safe NHLer. And another guy that like last year at the Holinka lit it up. And at that point was like solidifying himself as a top 10 pick. He just happened to be in Oshawa this year, which was a really shitty environment for like a top end center. And I do think that, you know, you look at the size with him and he's got crazy skill. He almost fucking pulled off the Michigan at the Holinka last year. Like it's legit. Like he's sick. So I actually do think he's one guy. We've talked about him before too. Like
a couple times.
Yeah. So like for Minnesota for sure, like a guy like Callum Richie kind of fits that mold where he's something that they don't necessarily have, where he's a center with good size. There is offensive upside. I think at this point it's kind of like fizzled out in terms of like that high. I think a lot would have to go right for him to be a top 6 center, but there's potential there for sure. And I still think he's a really good player. So yeah, I think that's a possibility. I could see teams falling in love with him though, as a guy that, hey, he's got center-esque pedigree, style of play, plays a really good two-way game. He's a very smart player, and he's big, and the skating isn't a hallmark by any means, but if he's in your middle six and he's like a shutdown center with like decent offensive upside, that's a good pick, which is why I had him going before.
Okay, fair. This is, well, you haven't picked him yet, have you?
I couldn't remember if I sent him to Pittsburgh.
No, you have not picked him yet. He is still available. But this one's the big one, Z. You got to sell all the fans, sell all the listeners. Who is the guy that's going to get everyone excited? Who is the next Judd'z Bud? Who is JUDD Brackett going to take here at 22, assuming they stand pat? That's going to be the next really exciting prospect that's going to be added to the pool.
Yeah, man. And I'm honestly, it might be the boring pick because this is exactly who we've talked about for a while. And then realistically, I think he does end up getting picked before this, mostly because I think Pronman has him at like 6 or 8, which is like, that is, sure. But a guy like Nate Danielson, for me, like, I feel like that's right up their alley. Number one, I do think he can be a center at the NHL level. He's got no shit, legit offensive upside. He put up some crazy numbers throughout this year for Brandon on a team that really like wasn't great, but he put up excellent numbers. I think he kind of fits that profile too with JUDD Brackett, where obviously, like most first round picks at 18 years old, this isn't the finished product. So I think he's got enough foundational tools to be not just like a high offensive upside type guy, but I think there's enough there that makes me think he can at least be a decent two-way center. So I think you kind of take that swing on the upside, knowing that you're not rushing him. You're not needing him to be in the NHL within the next 2-3 years, where he can play in the WHL again, continue to work on both sides there again. And he's a center that's got decent size. And I think he can be capable of being a pretty good two-way center. And that the upside's legit, man. Like, he makes some plays too, where it's like, a lot of the things he does, it's not necessarily like the sexiest, but whatever he does, like, he just produces. So I think he ends up getting picked before this, but I think if he's there, I think that's a pretty good pick for the Minnesota Wild. Another guy that I would look at, similar mold, a little bit more of a wild card, but a guy like Riley Heidt, who we'll see if he's a center or a wing at the NHL level, but also like crazy high upside. He can be a little bit of a loose cannon there. He had a top 15 type potential too. So a guy like Riley Heidt or a guy like Nate Danielson, but I think JUDD Brackett would love him. Riley Heidt.
Okay, so you're not trying to talk about Hunter Haight. I just need to make sure. Okay.
No, yeah.
I don't know who Riley Heidt is, but I gotta ask.
Prince George Cougars, yeah.
Because you've been talking about a lot of guys for a little bit, and you have not mentioned Nate Danielson once. So anyone that's listened to all of these is asking, like, okay, why not Gavin Brindley? Why not Guyayev? Like, why is Nate Danielson popping now? And you're like, oh my God, I don't think this guy will last this long, but I also haven't talked about him this whole time.
Yeah. I think, again, I do think that he's going to go before 22, 21, whatever, just because I've seen him mocked going so much higher than a lot of other guys.
Because of Pronman. Thank you, sir.
Well, and Pronman also, he does his mock drafts similar to Bob McKenzie, not as much influence from NHL teams, but he does take a lot of his rankings and based on what scouts are telling him. But I just kind of look at guys who I think I would, but for me, again, this is my ranking, right? So or who I would take in that position. So I think a lot of it has had to do with the fact that like I've probably taken guys higher than they'll go, and other guys as a result have slipped. And I think with Gavin Brindley, I think he'll slip lower than I would probably take him, just because he's a 5'10" right foot right shot, or Jesus Christ, 5'10" right shot winger who doesn't really like, a lot would have to go right for him to be a top 6 winger in the NHL.
Sure, that's fair. Okay, and so like to entertain the people, let's say that Nate Danielson goes earlier, like you think. Give me 1 or 2 other names for the Minnesota Wild that you see being available here that you think could be impactful to the prospect pool. Sam
Honzek, who probably won't last if he's still there, probably won't go a whole lot farther. Again, he's a 6'4" guy that plays center here and there for Vancouver, most of the wing. I think his stock also would have skyrocketed even more so if he didn't get hurt like game 2 or 3 of the World Juniors, because he was unbelievable in those first few games for Slovakia. Playmaker, he's got a crazy shot. 2-way games is pretty decent enough skater. Like there's a whole lot of, again, like you want to talk about guys that have the foundational tools who you're just like banking on developing. And if you're Minnesota, you're looking at your pool and who you have employed at the development level, and you're feeling pretty good. So that's another guy, Sam Honzek, who I think has a pretty good chance just based on the profile of going before then. That if he's there too, though, like, man, if he pans out as a center at the NHL level, like, fuck, is he a stud? And I just see Gavin Brindley falling into like the mid to late 20s because he's small, even though I think like this kid's legit. Like he's so good.
Fair. All right. And again, putting it to you, I don't care either way. Do we go through 32? Do you want to run down like the next 4 or 5 guys that you see just being the next tier of players? Do we sign off? What do you want to do? It's your show.
Up to you, man. I've got plenty of beers at this point where we can keep going for the 11 people that are still here. Hey, you know, at one point we were like at 75 people tuning in.
That's right.
Which is like, God bless them.
And guess what? The 11 that are still here, we fucking love you. So,
and if you're up 9 immediately, they're like, fuck this guy.
2 are like, oh shit, we're still here. Fuck.
Don't want to get found out. Yeah, we can go through the whole first round if we want to, and if people want to chime in, feel free. We can answer questions.
I'm down to sit here and drink and keep on going. No real questions have popped up except what we've already asked, because like the juice again, like how far could the Wild move up with Addison, our 23, and one of our seconds? So like,
you don't want to do that to move up a couple slots. You don't want to give up all that.
But the question is, how far could they move up? Like, he's not saying I want to move up a couple slots. He's asking you how far so he can evaluate whether or not he wants to make the trade.
I don't know, like take a pick for one of those first round teams that's got 2 picks or 3 picks in the first round that's picking ahead of you, I guess. Like, that's
basically
man, like,
Arizona.
That's so
Arizona
much.
Only fits the profile.
You're not doing but you're not doing that. Like, also, how many teams have put that package together just to move up a couple slots? Like,
that's not a couple slots. That's 10 at that point. If you could move up to 12.
And I don't think any team that's picking the top 12 wants to do that anyway. So I don't.
Sure.
It's just not.
But I'm not asking about those teams. Like, what's the limit for you? Like moving up to 15, moving up to 12, 10, like if you were going to put a package like that together.
So you're asking 2 questions at the same time, though.
No, I'm not asking.
I'm not doing it. I'm just not doing it. I'm just not doing that.
Okay. It's not happening. Done. End of discussion. The juice. No move is happening. I'm sorry. And actually, a question off that then for the Minnesota Wild. Are the Wild more likely to move up or move back? And standing pat's not an option.
Move back.
Okay.
Because they have 2 seconds, right?
That sounds accurate. Let's see. They have it on the side here.
Because I could see JUDD Brackett being like, all right, we have a top 3 fucking prospect pool.
Do the Wild have a second?
I thought they did. Maybe they don't. I don't fucking know
I don't know. According to Tankathon, they don't. I don't know if that's accurate or not. So we can move past it.
Feels right.
Oh, nope. They have the 63rd, so second to last pick from Vegas. But that looks like
they have their second still.
Not according to. Oh yeah, they do. Yep, 54. So yeah, they have two.
I can see them, if anything, moving back.
There's a lot of names on this screen, man. I'm starting to blur them all together.
Love
Plus
that.
every sip of Weller that I have, it gets more and more blurry.